The planet Zalara glowed beneath two suns, its forests sparkling with silver leaves and streams that shimmered like liquid crystal. At the center of the planet stood the alien palace, a towering structure of crystal and metal, home to Queen Zephyra and her daughter, Princess Lyra. The palace hummed with life, as alien attendants and guards moved gracefully through wide halls. One morning, the palace sensors detected an unusual signal, a ship approaching from the stars. It was small, sleek, and unlike anything Zalara had seen. Queen Zephyra frowned as she watched the display. "A human," she whispered, her voice tight with curiosity. Humans were known to be fragile, slow, and unpredictable. She had heard stories, but none had ever been to her world. Princess Lyra, standing beside her mother, tilted her head. "Mother, should we meet him?" she asked. Her tone was calm, but her eyes held excitement. Lyra had always been fascinated by humans. There was something about their spirit that stories could not capture. The queen considered this. Humans were dangerous only in stories of war. But what was a single human doing near Zalara? Finally, she commanded, "Bring him to the palace carefully. I want to see this human with my own eyes." The human, Captain Elias, stepped out of his ship with a mixture of caution and curiosity. His uniform was simple but functional, his boots leaving slight marks on Zalara's soft silver soil. He looked around, taking in the towering crystal spires and the glowing forest beyond. Elias had seen many worlds, but nothing like this. The colors, the shapes, the way the air seemed to hum with life. It was almost magical. When the palace guards approached, their forms unlike anything on Earth, tall, slender, with translucent skin that shimmered faintly, Elias raised his hands slowly. "I come in peace," he said. His voice was calm, steady, filled with respect. The guards whispered to each other in a language Elias could not understand. One guard, taller than the rest, stepped forward. "You will follow us. No sudden moves." His tone was formal but not cruel. Elias nodded, understanding the unspoken rule. Here, manners and patience were as important as strength. Inside the palace, the halls were wide and bright. Light reflected off the walls, bouncing in patterns that almost seemed alive. Elias walked carefully, aware that he was being watched. Servants and attendants stared at him, curious and cautious. No one spoke directly to him. Their language was alien, full of sounds he could not repeat, but he sensed that his presence caused a stir. Finally, they brought him to the throne room, where Queen Zephyra and Princess Lyra waited. The queen sat on a raised platform, her form regal and intimidating. Her skin was pale silver, eyes large and deep, filled with intelligence and authority. Lyra stood beside her, smaller but no less elegant, her gaze fixed on the human with interest. Elias bowed slightly. "I am Captain Elias," he said. "I come from a distant world, seeking knowledge and friendship." His words were simple, but they carried honor and sincerity, qualities that humans often carried without even realizing. Queen Zephyra's eyes narrowed. She had expected a weak, frightened human. Instead, she saw someone calm, alert, and confident. "Why have you come to Zalara, human?" she asked, her voice echoing in the wide room. "Curiosity," Elias replied honestly, "and the hope that we can learn from each other." He spoke clearly, carefully, as if each word might change their opinion of him. Lyra smiled, sensing something unusual about him. Humans were not like the aliens she knew. Fragile, yes, but also determined, clever, and unafraid of challenge. She felt a strange warmth, a connection she could not explain. For the next few days, Elias was introduced to palace life. He observed the aliens' routines, learning their habits and language slowly. Despite the differences, he adapted quickly. He noticed patterns others missed and made suggestions that improved efficiency, surprising the attendants. One day, the palace scientists asked him to help with a minor experiment, a demonstration of alien energy manipulation. The equipment was delicate and the procedure required precision. As the experiment began, a sudden malfunction caused sparks to fly. The attending aliens froze, unsure of how to react. Elias acted instinctively. He stepped forward, using his knowledge of mechanics and logic to stabilize the system. Within moments, the sparks ceased and the energy field returned to normal. The aliens whispered among themselves. None had expected such quick thinking. Princess Lyra's smile grew. "You are remarkable," she said quietly, almost to herself. The queen's gaze, however, was sharp. She studied him silently, sensing an unusual strength in this human, one that was not physical but intellectual and emotional. As days passed, Elias continued to impress. He helped solve disputes among attendants, suggested improvements in palace routines, and even found a way to purify water for the gardens more efficiently than the aliens' traditional method. Each time the palace staff whispered in awe, Lyra spent time with him as well. They explored the palace gardens together, laughing as they compared the differences between human and alien life. Elias shared stories of Earth, of oceans, mountains, and skies filled with clouds. Lyra listened, fascinated. In return, she showed him hidden places in the palace, secret paths and quiet rooms filled with light. Through these interactions, Elias's presence began to shift the palace's energy. Where once there was strict hierarchy and careful formality, now there was curiosity, engagement, and hope. Even Queen Zephyra felt it, though she would never admit it aloud. One evening, as the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the palace, Queen Zephyra observed Elias and Lyra from her chambers. They were in the garden, talking quietly, laughing softly. The queen felt a strange tremor in her chest, a feeling she did not understand. "Who is he?" she whispered. More to herself than anyone else, she had always been the ruler, confident in her power and control. Yet this human, so small, so seemingly fragile, made her question everything. Lyra, sensing her mother's gaze, looked up and smiled. "He is my human," she said simply. Her words carried certainty, a quiet declaration that surprised even her. The queen's eyes widened. That human belonged to her daughter, not to her, not to the palace, not even to the world. And in that moment something shifted. The queen knew that this human was different. Not because of strength, not because of technology, but because of heart, courage, and intelligence, qualities humans had in abundance and often underestimated themselves. The next morning, the palace buzzed with activity. Rumors about the human spread among attendants and guards. Everyone wanted to see what made him special. Elias, unaware of the whispers, continued to help wherever he could, showing respect for the alien's ways while introducing his own ideas. Lyra stayed close, observing him, learning from him, and slowly realizing that he had a gift. He could see solutions where others saw only problems. He could calm fears with words. He could inspire courage without raising a weapon. Queen Zephyra watched silently, torn between admiration and caution. Humans were unpredictable. And yet, Elias had already begun to change the palace without fighting, without challenging authority directly. She realized that curiosity, respect, and courage could be more powerful than any weapon. That evening, Elias looked out over the gardens, thinking about the world he had arrived in. He was far from home, surrounded by beings whose ways he could barely understand, yet he felt a strange sense of belonging. He was here to learn, yes, but also to teach. Without knowing it, he had already begun to leave a mark. Princess Lyra approached him, smiling. "Do you like Solara?" she asked. "I do," Elias replied, returning the smile. "It is beautiful and full of surprises." Lyra nodded. "And it is better because you are here," she said softly. Her words carried more meaning than Elias realized. In that moment, the seeds of friendship and perhaps something stronger were planted. Queen Zephyra, watching from a distance, felt her chest tighten. The human had done what no alien had done before. He made her daughter smile in a way that was completely new. And deep inside, she wondered, who was this human, really? And what power did he hold that could stir hearts so profoundly? The palace was quiet that night, but the air seemed charged with change. One small human had arrived, and already the world of Zalara felt different. The morning light bathed the crystal palace of Zalara in a soft golden glow. Queen Zephyra observed from her chambers as the attendants moved through the halls with quiet efficiency, their movements graceful but repetitive. Everything in the palace followed order and tradition, and nothing was allowed to disturb it. Yet since Captain Elias arrived, subtle changes had begun to ripple through the grand halls. Princess Lyra, meanwhile, was already awake and waiting for Elias. She had learned that mornings were his favorite time, when he seemed most alert and open to learning. As he stepped into the garden, she greeted him with a warm smile. "Good morning, human," she said. "Good morning, Princess," Elias replied, his voice calm and steady. carried an ease that seemed to lighten the air around him. "How is the day treating you?" Lyra laughed softly. "Better now that you are here." She motioned to the garden paths. "Come, I want to show you something." They walked together through a maze of silver-leaved trees and sparkling streams. Lyra explained the intricacies of Zilara's botanical wonders, pointing out plants that changed color with emotion, flowers that sang when touched, and vines that could sense the presence of strangers. Elias listened carefully, asking questions, observing patterns, and occasionally offering insights that impressed Lyra. "You notice things differently," she said, tilting her head. "Most humans I have heard about are clumsy, loud, or reckless. But you see connections we miss." Elias shrugged lightly. "I suppose humans have to adapt quickly. We survive by noticing details and understanding people." Lyra smiled, intrigued. She had never met anyone like him. His presence made her think, made her question, and, most surprisingly, made her feel at ease in a world she had always found controlled and distant. Back inside the palace, Queen Zephyra watched from a high balcony. She had been observing Elias since his arrival, noting the way he moved, spoke, and interacted with others. He did not dominate, he did not command, yet he inspired attention and respect naturally. The queen found herself wondering what it was about him that caused such effects. Later that day, the palace scientists invited Elias to help with a new experiment. It involved a delicate device designed to harness energy from the twin suns. The scientists were skilled, but the equipment required careful timing and creative problem-solving. As the experiment began, a surge of energy caused alarms to sound. The young scientists panicked, unsure how to stabilize the device. Without hesitation, Elias stepped forward. He observed the readings, calculated the timing, and guided the scientists with precise instructions. Within moments, the energy stabilized and the room was calm again. The aliens stared at him in awe. It was not strength or force that had saved the experiment, it was thinking, adaptability, and courage under pressure. Princess Lyra's eyes sparkled with admiration. She had begun to see the human not as weak or fragile, but as something extraordinary in ways she had never imagined. As days passed, Elias continued to influence the palace in small, meaningful ways. He suggested ways to improve the efficiency of daily routines, ways to conserve energy without compromising comfort, and methods to communicate more clearly between departments. The attendants and guards, initially skeptical, began to follow his advice. Lyra observed each interaction with interest. Elias had a rare talent. He respected the alien traditions while gently showing where improvements could be made. No one felt insulted, and yet everything ran smoother because of him. One afternoon, they sat by a quiet stream discussing human culture. Elias spoke of Earth, its oceans, mountains, and cities. He described how humans celebrated, how they solved problems, and how they learned from mistakes. Lyra listened intently, fascinated by the stories of a world so different yet filled with determination and hope. "In your stories," she said, "humans seem small, weak, but also fearless. You face dangers with courage even when odds are against you." Elias smiled. "We learn to rely on each other and on our minds. Physical strength is not everything. Sometimes thinking, patience, and understanding are stronger than any weapon." Lyra considered this, realizing that his presence in the palace was changing more than routines. It was changing attitudes, inspiring confidence and sparking curiosity. One evening, a minor crisis arose in the palace. A valuable artifact, used to stabilize the palace's energy, was accidentally displaced during routine maintenance. The attendants panicked, unsure how to restore balance. Elias quickly assessed the situation, suggesting adjustments that required both precise timing and creative thinking. Working together, the attendants followed his instructions. The energy stabilized and the artifact returned safely to its position. The palace staff whispered in amazement. This human, so small and seemingly fragile, had saved the day again. Lyra approached him quietly. "You are extraordinary," she said softly. "I have never seen anyone act like this before." Elias shook his head gently. "I am just doing what I can. Sometimes seeing a problem clearly is all it takes." Lyra's eyes lingered on him, a warmth growing in her chest. The human's presence was no longer simply fascinating, it was inspiring. She realized that he was teaching her world a lesson that even the queen might not fully understand yet. That courage, Intelligence and empathy could change everything. The queen, however, still observed cautiously. She had noticed the shift in the palace. Attendants were more confident. Routines flowed more smoothly, and even the young princess seemed brighter, more alive. Zephyra had always ruled through authority and order, but Elias had done something different. He had won attention and respect without demanding it. That night, as the twin moons rose over Zalara, the queen spoke to her advisors. "Who is this human? He is small, yet his presence changes everything. He does not follow our ways, yet the palace listens. He does not fight, yet he inspires loyalty. I must understand him fully." Her advisors nodded, equally puzzled and intrigued. No one had ever seen a human affect Zalara in this way. The queen herself felt an unfamiliar mix of curiosity and unease. The next day, Elias accompanied Lyra on a tour of the palace's outer grounds. They walked along terraces overlooking forests that shimmered in shades of silver and blue. Birds with translucent wings sang in patterns that seemed to mimic the palace's music, and streams reflected the twin suns in dazzling light. Lyra shared stories of the history of Zalara, of past rulers and battles, and of the many innovations of her people. Elias listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed patterns she had not noticed herself. He suggested small improvements, not in a critical way, but as a way to learn and collaborate. "It is fascinating," he said. "Your world is beautiful and complex, but sometimes the smallest change can make a big difference." Lyra nodded slowly. "You see things differently," she said. "Most aliens follow routine. They rarely question or experiment outside tradition, but you challenge without upsetting." He smiled. "Humans often have to adapt to survive. Perhaps I see differently because I am used to change." Lyra considered his words, feeling a mix of admiration and warmth. She had never met anyone who could influence her world so gently, yet so profoundly. That evening, as the palace settled into quiet, the queen observed her daughter and the human once again. They were laughing over a simple puzzle, working together to solve it, and in that moment, something inside Zephyra shifted. "Who is he?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Her voice trembled slightly. For the first time in years, she felt both awe and uncertainty. The human was small, yet he commanded attention and respect in a way she could not explain. Lyra, sensing her mother's gaze, looked up and smiled. "He is my human," she said softly. The words were simple, but their meaning carried weight. A quiet claim, an emotional bond that even the queen could sense. The queen's eyes widened, and she felt a strange tightening in her chest. This human, he had already begun to change her palace, her daughter, and perhaps even herself. It was a small beginning, but it was undeniable. The palace hummed with life that night, different from before. Elias's influence had spread quietly but surely. Attendants moved with renewed confidence. Guards acted with precision and foresight. And the princess seemed lighter, happier, and more curious than ever. Elias, unaware of the queen's quiet contemplation, looked out over the gardens. He was far from home in a world alien and strange, yet he felt a sense of purpose. He had arrived to learn, to observe, and to help. But slowly, without intending it, he was leaving a mark, showing the people of Zalara a way to combine tradition with creativity, order with curiosity, and caution with courage. Princess Lyra joined him, her eyes reflecting the twin moons above. "Do you feel it too?" she asked. "The change in the palace?" "I do," Elias said, smiling. "And it is only the beginning." Lyra nodded. She could sense that this human, small and different as he was, held a power unlike any she had seen before, a power that was quiet, steady, and deeply inspiring. And in her heart she knew that his presence would change Zalara forever. The crystal towers of the palace shone brilliantly under the twin suns, but the beauty of Zalara could not hide the tension that had begun to spread. Rumors whispered among the palace attendants and guards. A rival alien faction known as the Draxons had noticed the unusual human in the palace. They saw Captain Elias not as a visitor, but as a potential threat to their ambitions. Queen Zephyra sat in her chambers, studying reports sent from her scouts. "The Draxons are moving closer," she said, her voice calm but tense. "They believe the human gives us an advantage, and they intend to test it." Princess Lyra stood beside her, her gaze unwavering. "Mother, I trust Elias. He may be human, but he has shown wisdom beyond what many of our people possess. He will help us." The queen's eyes narrowed. She had seen Elias solve problems and influence the palace without force, yet she could not fully predict the human's abilities. "We shall see," she said carefully. "Prepare for all possibilities. Alert the palace guards and strengthen our defenses." Elias, meanwhile, sensed a shift in the palace atmosphere. He had noticed subtle changes among the attendants, nervous glances, hurried whispers, and tense postures. The human mind was quick to sense danger, and his instincts told him that a threat was approaching. Lyra approached him in the palace gardens. "Elias, the Draxons may attack." "They are cautious but persistent. We need a plan." Elias studied her carefully. "We need to understand them first. If they attack, it will not be with brute force alone. They will try to exploit fear and hesitation. We must anticipate their moves." Lyra nodded. "Can you help us prepare our defenses?" Elias smiled faintly. "I can, but you must trust me and your people must trust each other." The next day, the palace held a council of defense. Attendants, guards, and advisors gathered in the grand hall, their faces serious. Queen Zephyra presided, her presence commanding silence. Elias stood beside Lyra, explaining his ideas in simple words that the aliens could understand. "Your defenses are strong," he began, "but the Draxons rely on speed, deception, and unexpected tactics. If we only focus on strength, they will find a way around it." A senior guard frowned. "We have prepared for every scenario. Why do we need your suggestions, human?" Elias met the guard's gaze steadily. "Because humans survive by observing, adapting, and cooperating. Sometimes the smallest change in strategy makes the biggest difference." Lyra spoke up. "Listen to him. He has already helped us solve problems no one else could. We need his insight." The queen, watching quietly, allowed him to continue. Elias proposed a layered defense system. Scouts stationed in unseen positions, traps that could mislead intruders, and guards trained to work in teams rather than individually. Most importantly, he emphasized communication and trust. If the palace worked as one, their strength would multiply. The attendants and guards were skeptical at first, but as Elias explained each step, it became clear that his strategies were clever and practical. Even the queen felt a twinge of admiration. She had always relied on her authority and advanced technology, yet this human's ideas seemed to make the defenses smarter, faster, and more flexible. That night, Elias walked through the palace gardens with Lyra. "Do you think they will attack soon?" she asked quietly. Elias looked toward the horizon where the first shadows of the Draxons' ships could be seen. "They are testing us. The sooner we prepare, the better our chances. But remember, courage and cooperation are more powerful than any weapon." Lyra nodded. "I will follow your lead." Elias paused, noticing how the princess's trust in him had grown. "Lyra," he said softly, "you are brave and wise, but you must also be careful. The Draxons will try to use fear and doubt against us. We cannot let them divide us." Lyra smiled faintly. "I am not afraid, and neither are our people." The next morning, scouts reported that the Draxons had approached the outskirts of Zalara's forests. Their ships were sleek and dark, designed to blend with shadows. The palace went into alert mode. Guards patrolled the walls, energy shields hummed to life, and palace scientists prepared protective measures for the crystal towers. Elias and Lyra walked along the terrace, observing the preparations. "Your people are skilled," Elias said, "but skill alone will not protect the palace. They must trust one another completely." Lyra nodded. "Then teach them," she said simply. "Show them how to work together," Elias agreed. For hours he walked through the palace halls, speaking with guards and attendants. He explained simple teamwork techniques, showed them how to anticipate moves, and encouraged them to trust each other's instincts. By the time the evening arrived, the palace was not only prepared for battle, it was unified. As night fell, the Draxons launched their first strike. Their ships hovered just beyond the palace perimeter, sending small squads of soldiers to test the defenses. The palace guards reacted instinctively, moving in coordinated formations that Elias had taught them. Lyra stayed beside him, her eyes sharp and alert. "They are stronger than I expected," she whispered. Elias nodded. "Strength is not everything. Watch their patterns, anticipate their mistakes, and trust your people." The first squads of Draxons advanced but quickly found themselves caught in the traps and misdirections Elias had designed. Guards moved like shadows, striking at the right moments and retreating in perfect coordination. The Draxons, expecting disarray, were confused and frustrated. Lyra watched in amazement. Your strategies. They work. Elias smiled faintly. It is not me, it is all of us working together. The Queen observed from her balcony, her voice trembling slightly. Who is that? She whispered, referring to Elias. She had seen him in action, not fighting with brute strength, but leading with wisdom, courage, and calm confidence. Her daughter's admiration was clear, and it unsettled her in a way she could not explain. Lyra smiled knowingly. He is my human, she said softly. Her voice carried certainty and warmth, and the Queen felt the truth of it in her heart. This human was unlike any being she had encountered. The battle continued through the night, with the Draxons probing the palace defenses again and again. Each time, Elias and Lyra coordinated the palace forces, anticipating every move and turning potential disasters into successes. Guards who had been nervous and uncertain now acted with confidence and skill. By dawn, the Draxons had retreated to their ships. Their scouts had underestimated the palace, and the human strategies had turned the battle in favor of Zalara. After the battle, the palace erupted in quiet celebration. Guards and attendants praised one another, sharing stories of small victories during the night. Lyra hugged Elias gently. You were amazing, she said. Without you, I do not know what would have happened. Elias shook his head. It was all of you. I only helped organize what was already here. You trusted each other, and that made the difference. Queen Zephyra entered the hall silently, observing the human and her daughter. She felt a strange mix of admiration and unease. Elias had not only saved the palace, but had changed the way her people thought and acted. He had proven that strength did not always come from weapons or power, but from courage, intelligence, and cooperation. The Queen's voice trembled slightly. Who is he? She whispered again, more to herself than anyone else. She had begun to understand that this human, so small and seemingly fragile, possessed a power she could not ignore, a power that inspired hope, unity, and courage. Lyra, sensing her mother's contemplation, smiled. He is my human, she repeated softly but firmly. Her words carried a quiet certainty that even the Queen could not dismiss. Elias had become more than a visitor. He had become a symbol of human potential and extraordinary resilience. That evening, the palace settled into quiet once more. The Draxons had retreated and the palace was safe for now, yet everyone knew that future challenges would come. The human had proven his worth not with force but with guidance and wisdom. Elias walked with Lyra through the gardens, the streams reflecting the light of the twin moons. The Draxons will return, he said quietly. But if we remain united, if we trust each other and act with courage, we can face anything. Lyra nodded. And we will. Together. Elias looked at her, sensing the deep bond that had grown between them. Yes, he said. Together. The palace hummed with life, changed quietly but profoundly by the presence of one human. The attendants, the guards, and the princess had all learned something new. That strength was not always physical, that courage and cooperation could overcome fear, and that one human could inspire hope in even the most disciplined and cautious world. And as Queen Zephyra watched silently from her balcony, she realized that this human had done more than save her palace. He had begun to reshape the hearts and minds of her people. The twin suns of Zalara rose slowly, painting the sky with hues of gold and violet. The palace, gleaming in the early light, stood ready, its crystal towers reflecting the brilliance of the day. But beneath the beauty, tension thrummed like a living pulse. The Draxons had returned, larger and more determined than before. Captain Elias stood on the palace terrace, observing the horizon. Small, dark shapes moved among the distant forests, scouts of the Draxons testing the boundaries again. He had anticipated this. He had studied their patterns, their methods, and he knew that the coming attack would not be just a test. It would be their true attempt to break the palace defenses. Princess Lyra joined him, her eyes sharp and confident. Are you ready? She asked. Elias nodded. We are ready. But remember, victory will not come from force alone. It will come from courage, foresight, and teamwork. Lyra smiled faintly. Then let's show them what Zalara and humans can do together. Inside the grand hall, Queen Zephyra addressed the palace defenders. Her voice was steady, but Elias noticed a flicker of emotion, pride and fear intertwined. The Draxons believe strength alone will win battles, she said. We will show them that intelligence, unity, and courage are stronger than brute force. Trust in each other and trust in our guest, Captain Elias. He has taught us well." The attendants and guards straightened, determination in their eyes. The air was tense but focused. For the first time in years, the palace felt not only protected but alive with purpose. Elias moved among the defenders, offering guidance and encouragement. He reminded them of small tactics, how to anticipate enemy movement, how to protect each other, and how to use the palace's unique structure to their advantage. He spoke in calm, measured tones, inspiring confidence rather than fear. Lyra stayed close, observing her people, watching how Elias's presence strengthened them. She felt a deep admiration and trust in him, a bond that had grown quietly over days of shared effort, laughter, and challenge. The Draxons' first wave arrived as the suns reached their peak. Sleek ships swooped low, releasing squads of soldiers toward the palace walls. They expected panic, confusion, and disarray. Instead, they found organized, coordinated defense. Elias had designed layers of traps and misdirections that confused the attackers. Guards moved like a single organism, anticipating moves, covering each other's positions, and turning the Draxons' strength against them. Lyra watched as a small squad of alien soldiers almost slipped past a perimeter, but Elias shouted precise instructions. Guards intercepted them swiftly, and the squad was forced to retreat. The princess could not help but smile. This human strategies worked brilliantly. The Draxons, frustrated by unexpected resistance, adapted quickly, using speed and deception. But Elias was always a step ahead. He had predicted their methods and prepared contingencies. Each move they made was countered by foresight, clever traps, and the unity of the defenders. Inside the palace, Queen Zephyra observed silently. Her voice had trembled slightly the day she asked, "Who is he?" Now as she watched Elias in action, she understood. He was not strong in the way her people measured strength, yet his influence had changed the palace entirely. The human did not fight with brute force. He did not rely on superior technology or intimidation. Instead, he inspired, guided, and coordinated. Each victory of the palace forces was a testament to his vision and the courage he inspired. Lyra moved through the battlefield, assisting where needed, her trust in Elias complete. "He sees patterns we do not," she whispered to a guard who passed by. "And he knows exactly what to do with them." The guard nodded. "It is unlike anything I have seen. The human, he is remarkable." The battle raged for hours, each wave of the Draxons testing the palace defenses more aggressively. One group attempted a surprise breach of the main crystal tower. Elias quickly coordinated a countermeasure, guiding defenders to block the attackers while simultaneously redirecting the energy shields to protect vulnerable areas. Lyra fought alongside the palace guards, following Elias's instructions with precision. Together they turned potential disaster into triumph. Each time a Draxon squad fell back, the palace defenders' confidence grew. The Draxons, expecting fear and hesitation, encountered discipline, strategy, and courage. Elias noticed small details others would have missed: weak points in enemy formations, fatigue in their movements, and signs of doubt. He relayed this information to Lyra and the guards, ensuring that every decision was informed, deliberate, and coordinated. As the battle reached its peak, the Draxons sent a larger force directly toward the palace center. Their intention was to overwhelm the defenders with sheer numbers. Elias did not panic. He calmly assessed the situation and issued precise instructions. "Divide into units," he said. "Distract the front line while our central force moves to flank them. Use the terrain and the palace's architecture to your advantage. Trust one another." The guards followed his commands flawlessly. The front line drew the enemy in, while hidden squads moved through side passages, striking at critical points. The Draxons were caught off guard. Their attacks faltered, confusion spreading among their ranks. Lyra's heart raced, but she trusted Elias completely. She moved alongside him, coordinating defenders and reinforcing morale. She realized with growing admiration that this human had an extraordinary ability to see solutions under pressure, something even the most experienced Zelaran commanders struggled to do. In the midst of the chaos, a squad of Draxons managed to reach the palace's main energy core. Without hesitation, Elias ran forward, signaling guards to follow. Using quick thinking, He stabilized the core temporarily while the guards removed the intruders. His calm actions prevented disaster. The queen watched in silent awe. Here was a human, physically smaller than her elite warriors, yet he had saved the heart of her palace, the very center of Zalara's power. Her voice trembled once more as she whispered, "Who is that?" Lyra, standing beside Elias as he directed the palace defenses, smiled knowingly. "He is my human," she said softly. The words carried certainty and affection, revealing the bond that had quietly grown between them. As the day wore on, the Draxons began to retreat. Their strategies had been anticipated, their attacks countered, and their morale broken by the unity and precision of the palace defenders. Elias's guidance had transformed the defenders from a group of individuals into a coordinated, fearless force. Lyra approached Elias as the last of the Draxons withdrew. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "You saved the palace." Elias shook his head. "We did it," he replied. "Your people fought bravely. I only helped organize what was already there." Lyra smiled, but she knew the truth. Without Elias's calm courage, foresight, and strategies, the palace might have fallen. She had witnessed firsthand the extraordinary power of human ingenuity and leadership. That evening, the palace celebrated quietly. Attendants and guards shared stories of their actions during the battle, proud of their courage and coordination. Elias and Lyra walked through the gardens, their steps slow as they reflected on the events of the day. "You were amazing," Lyra said, looking at him with deep admiration. "I have never seen anyone act so calmly and wisely under pressure." Elias smiled faintly. "I am only human. We survive by thinking clearly, acting bravely, and trusting each other." Lyra considered his words. She realized that this human had changed not only the battle, but the hearts of everyone in the palace. Courage, unity, and intelligence, qualities often underestimated, had proven more powerful than any weapon. Queen Zephyra remained on her balcony, watching her daughter and the human. The palace had survived, her people were safe, and yet she felt a new and unfamiliar respect and fear for the human who had guided them. He was small, fragile by appearance, yet his influence was undeniable. "Who is he?" she whispered again, the words trembling from awe and realization. She understood now that this human was extraordinary, not because of strength, but because of heart, mind, and courage. Lyra, sensing her mother's contemplation, turned to Elias and smiled. "You have done more than anyone could have imagined," she said softly. "And yet I know this is only the beginning." Elias looked at the horizon, where the Draxons' ships had disappeared into the distance. "Yes," he said quietly, "and we must be ready. The future will bring challenges, but together we can face them." The palace hummed with life, more vibrant than before. Guards, attendants, and even the queen had witnessed the power of a single human who had inspired courage, unity, and hope. Elias had not fought with weapons, yet he had led a victory that would be remembered. And as the twin moons rose over Zalara, casting silver light over the palace gardens, the bond between human and princess and the respect of the queen was sealed. Humanity had shown its true strength not in might but in heart and mind. The morning on Zalara was calm, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the previous day. The palace stood proud, its crystal towers glimmering in the sunlight, and the forests beyond shimmered softly in silver and blue. For the first time in weeks, the people of Zalara felt a sense of safety, but also renewed hope. Captain Elias walked through the palace gardens with Princess Lyra. The streams reflected the twin suns, and the leaves of the silver trees rustled gently in the breeze. The battle was over, but its lessons were still fresh. The palace guards moved with confidence now, and the attendants spoke with pride about their roles in defending their home. Lyra looked at Elias and smiled. "The palace has never been this alive," she said. "Your presence, it changed everything." Elias shook his head gently. "It wasn't just me. Your people were brave and skilled. I only helped guide them." Lyra tilted her head, her eyes thoughtful. "Perhaps. But you reminded us what we were capable of, and that is something no one else could have done." Elias nodded quietly, understanding her meaning. Courage and inspiration often came from unexpected places. He had seen it in humans, and now he saw it reflected in Zalara. Queen Zephyra entered the garden without announcing herself. Her steps were quiet, but her presence commanded attention. She observed Elias and Lyra, noting the bond that had grown between them. She had spent days watching the human in action, seeing how he influenced her people, guided the palace defenders, and inspired hope where fear had lived. "Human," she said finally, her voice calm but carrying authority. "You have done more than I imagined. You have saved my palace, my people, and even my daughter's heart." Elias bowed respectfully. "I am honored, Your Majesty. I only acted as I could, with the knowledge and experience I have. Your people fought bravely. I could not have done it alone." The Queen studied him closely, her silver eyes filled with a mix of respect, curiosity, and awe.
"Who are you, really?"
she asked softly. "You are fragile by appearance, yet strong in ways that surpass the mightiest warriors of Zalara." Elias smiled faintly. "I am a human," he said simply. "We survive by thinking clearly, acting with courage, and trusting one another. That is all." The Queen's voice trembled not from anger or fear, but from recognition and admiration. A human, so small yet capable of so much. She turned her gaze to Lyra, who was watching quietly. "And you, claim him as your own?" Lyra smiled knowingly. "He is my human," she said softly. Her voice carried certainty, a quiet but profound acknowledgement that the bond between them was real and deep. The Queen sighed, a mixture of acceptance and wonder filling her. She had seen the human's power, not in weapons or technology, but in heart, courage, and mind. For the first time, she felt something she had never experienced before: true respect for humanity. The palace held a ceremony that evening to honor the defenders and celebrate the survival of Zalara. Attendants, guards, and scientists gathered in the grand hall, their faces shining with pride. Elias was invited to stand alongside Queen Zephyra and Princess Lyra, a place of honor he had not expected. Lyra took his hand gently as they walked to the center of the hall. "Tonight we celebrate not just victory," she said, her voice carrying through the hall, "but courage, cooperation, and the extraordinary qualities of a human who has taught us more than we could have imagined." Elias glanced around at the assembled crowd, feeling a mixture of humility and pride. He had never sought recognition, but he understood the importance of this moment. It was not about him. It was about what humans could inspire in others. Queen Zephyra stepped forward, her voice clear and commanding. "Captain Elias has proven that strength is not measured by size or technology alone. It is measured by courage, intelligence, and the ability to unite people in the face of danger. Zalara owes him gratitude." The attendants and guards erupted in applause, not just for the human, but for the lesson he represented, that hope, ingenuity, and trust could triumph over fear and aggression.